I have a story from Siberia to share with you tonight. Once on the sharp, rocky shores of the northern sea, there lived a woman and a man, a one-eyed man. Now they had been married for a long, long time, and they had grown to middle age together. Now, in all that time that they had been married, the man would come and stay with the woman through the night. But every morning at dawn, he would slip out of bed, leave the house, and walk out of the village, and he would be gone until that next night. And the woman, she tried so hard to understand. And wondered where he went and what he did. Until finally, one day, one morning, as her husband slipped out of bed at dawn and started out of the house, she could take it no more. And she determined to follow him. And so she crept out of the house. She followed him as the man went through the village, out through the fields, and towards the great coniferous forest, and then entered into the deep dark of that forest. And the woman followed behind through the forest until the man came to a clearing in the middle of the forest. And in that clearing, there was a fallen tree, and he sat down on the tree. And the one eye that was in his head disappeared. Now, the woman had noticed that as the man had been approaching the forest, he started to change. His feet started to drag upon the ground, shuffling. His shoulders bent in, his whole body caving in. His whole demeanor changed, like there was a darkness encroaching over him before he even entered into the forest. And now there he sat on that log with no eye at all anymore, doing, as far as she could see, nothing. Now, all this time, because her husband was a man with one eye, she thought perhaps he was special, that he had certain talents. For among her people in Siberia, they say that a shaman can always be picked out, can be seen by the fact that he has one eye, one leg, and one arm. Now, her husband had never had anything except just the one eye. And now, as he sat on that log, not even that. And for all she could tell, he was doing nothing, helping no one. He was just sitting there doing nothing. And as she looked at him from the shadows of those thin trees, she found herself being filled with disgust at him and at all that she had done to keep their lives together throughout the years, taking care of all the things that needed to be done in the house, to feed, to clothe, everything that they needed. And she decided then and there she was done with it. She was going to leave. And so she turned around, retraced her steps back home. And as soon as she went into the house, she collected those few treasures, those things she most loved, and that would fit in the pockets of her tattered old coat. And that was all she took. And she left that house, leaving the door wide open behind her. And she too left the village, though not by the road that went out towards the forest. Instead, she headed out towards the sea, leaving the village. She had no idea where she was going, where. She just knew she was going. She had not gone far outside of the village when she saw a hill she had not remembered. And then the hill rippled and stood up, and it was a giantess who came straight at the woman, and without saying a word, snatched her up, threw her over her shoulder, and carried her away. With a few bounding steps, the giantess took the woman all the way up a snow-capped mountain, rolled away a great boulder in front of a cave, and then threw the woman into the cave, rolling that boulder back over the opening again and leaving her there. The woman was all alone in this cold, dank, dark cave, battered and bruised, and all of those treasures that she most loved had fallen out from her pockets as she had been carried on the giantess's shoulder. And she suddenly started to think, why? Why had she left her life? Lonely and sad as it was, at least it was familiar and safe. And now, here she was trapped in this cave. And she began to sob. And as she ran out of her tears, she heard a voice. Dry your tears. Look up, for there are the skins of land animals. Take one and put it on. The woman looked about. Her eyes had adjusted some to the gloom and saw that in fact there was a wee bit of light from a hole high up in the ceiling of the cave, coming through a hole. And then up against the wall she could see it, a thin ledge jutting out from the side of the cave, and on it a great pile of furs. The woman reached up and climbed until she could just get the edge of one of those pieces of fur, could just feel it enough to pull it down, and it came tumbling down on top of her. And it was so soft and comforting. The furs were luxurious to run her cold fingers through, and as she was petting and soothing that fur, she realized it was a fox fur. In fact, it was several fox furs. They had been sewn together into a coat. The woman shook out the furs and she took that coat and she put her arms into the sleeves. But as she did so, the fox skins grabbed tight against her own skin, squeezing and forming her into a shape that did not fit. It was too tight and she couldn't stand it. She ripped the furs off and threw them across the cave and fell into complete despair. Whatever that voice had been, those furs were not for her. She put her head in her hands and was overcome with despair. And then again, she heard that voice. Do not despair. Look up again, and you will see the skins of land birds. Take one and put it on. The woman looked up again. And sure enough, there, in another part where she had not looked before, there was a great basket woven of grass, and it was hanging from a hook from the side of the cave. And she could see spilling out the top of it feathers. She reached up towards the basket, giving it a good hit now and again till finally it tipped and the feathers started to fly out on top of her. They were as soft as snow as they landed on her. And she saw that they were crow feathers. And they had been sewn together into a cloak. She shook that cloak and she put it on, and as she did, she felt those crow skins clinging to her own flesh. But they felt good. They felt expansive, free. She stretched out her arms, and as she did, she could feel the air under her wings starting to lift her up. She felt so buoyant. She could feel the air under her wings rising up as she started to flap her wings. And she started to rise up into the air, flying higher and higher. And as she did, she aimed towards that little gem of light twinkling up there, high, high up into the cave. And as she got closer, that light seemed to expand, getting larger and larger until she could see the hole was plenty big enough for her to fly straight through. And she flew right out the top of the cave, out into the air, out into the open above that snow-capped mountain. She spread her wings and she let the wind take her where it would. And before she knew it, she found herself flying towards the edge of the sea. And there on the seashore, she saw a familiar figure. Her old father. She had not seen him in some time. He was a hunter. She could see that he was preparing to go out seal hunting. He was getting his boat packed, ready to go. Delighted to see a familiar figure, she flew around her father and then landed on that rocky shore and looked at him. And her father felt someone looking at him. And he noticed the crow on the rocks regarding him so intently that he was enticed to come close. And though the woman felt her heart going out towards her old father, still as he came close, she found her crow feet jumping back, hopping away so that he could not touch her. And when he saw that this woman crow would not let him approach, he reached into the pouch he had on his belt where he kept a bit of meat that he used for bait, and he threw it towards the crow. And she gobbled it up at once. It had been so long since she had eaten. He waited as she ate. And then he nodded at her, taking her presence with him as he went back to his boat, finished packing up, and set out into the sea for his hunt. And that woman crow spread her wings and followed him for a bit through the air above the boat, then circling around as something else caught her eye. Until the end of the day came. And she found her heart drawing her back towards the shore where she had seen her father. And she saw his hunting yurt there by the shore. She could tell he was home again, for his boat was back and there was smoke coming out the smoke hole. And feeling drawn to the familiar comfort of her father, she spread her wings and flew straight towards the door flap. But as she approached, her head suddenly turned and her crow body turned with it. And she could not enter. She tried again and again. But each time her head at the last minute would turn and her crow body would not enter. Until at last she understood. The life of human and human things it was not for her anymore. And she must leave that behind. So instead, the crow spread her wings and let the wind take her out into her new life.